You wake up. You haven't eaten a single bite. And yet your blood sugar meter is showing a number that's higher than what you saw right before you went to sleep. If you've ever stared at that reading in confusion, you're far from alone. This is one of the most common and most misunderstood patterns in blood sugar management, and it has almost nothing to do with anything you ate the night before. Most people assume that a high morning number means they slipped up somewhere, a late snack, a bigger dinner, maybe dessert they forgot about. But here's the thing, this rise can happen even during a complete fast, with zero food in the system for over 24 hours. That tells us the cause isn't digestion at all. It's something happening deep inside your liver, your hormones, and even your stomach while you sleep. Let's start with the first piece of the puzzle, a process called gluconeogenesis. Your liver, and to a smaller extent your kidneys and intestines, has the ability to manufacture brand new glucose out of amino acids, the building blocks of protein. This isn't a rare event. Amino acids are constantly moving in and out of your bloodstream as your muscles break down and rebuild tissue, which means your liver always has raw material on hand to convert into sugar. In a body producing plenty of insulin, this process stays in check. But once insulin output drops below a certain threshold, the liver starts producing glucose it shouldn't, even while you're fasting, quietly pushing your numbers upward overnight. A telltale sign that this is happening to you is a blood sugar that creeps up steadily through the night regardless of when or what you last ate. Diet alone typically won't fix this one for many people, especially those making very little insulin. Medication is what actually reins in the liver's overproduction. While weight loss and consistent exercise can improve how sensitive the liver and muscles are to whatever insulin remains. One caveat worth knowing, this varies enormously by how much natural insulin production you have left, so someone earlier in the disease process may barely notice it, while someone further along may see a dramatic swing. Now layer on top of that a second, separate mechanism, the dawn phenomenon. Here's what's strange about it. Even a steady, adequate dose of insulin held constant for 18 straight hours won't necessarily hold your blood sugar steady through the final hours of sleep. Research suggests the liver actually deactivates more circulating insulin during the early morning hours than at any other time of day. It doesn't matter if that insulin was self-produced or injected, the liver treats it the same. With less active insulin on board to hold back glucose production, your numbers climb. Researchers who've tracked blood sugar hour by hour overnight found that this rise tends to concentrate around 8 to 10 hours after bedtime for most affected people, though both the timing and the size of the increase vary widely from person to person. One sign that this is your specific issue, your numbers stay level all evening, then climb specifically in the final stretch before waking, not gradually across the whole night. The closest thing to a fix here is working with your doctor on the timing and type of your evening insulin dose or medication. Since this is a hormonal quirk rather than a lifestyle one, no amount of dietary tweaking will override it on its own. There's a third overlooked cause, and it's mechanical rather than hormonal, delayed stomach emptying, also called gastroparesis. Years of elevated blood sugar can damage the nerves that control the muscles of your stomach and intestines. When that happens, food can sit in your stomach far longer than expected, which means the glucose from your last meal doesn't hit your bloodstream on the normal timeline. It can show up hours later than you'd predict, including overnight. In mild cases, there may be no obvious stomach symptoms at all, just blood sugar readings that seem to defy logic. In more severe cases, you might notice bloating, a burning sensation in the midchest, or unusual fullness after eating. If you suspect this is playing a role, tracking exactly when you eat versus exactly when your numbers rise rather than just what you eat can reveal the lag. Now, here's something people almost always get wrong: stress. For decades, prolonged emotional stress, a rocky marriage, a stressful job, grief that drags on for months, has been blamed for blood sugar swings. But when you actually track the data closely over time, sustained emotional stress on its own rarely moves blood sugar directly. What it does do is drive overeating or binge eating, and that indirect path is where the real damage happens. Short, acute bursts of stress are a completely different story, though. A car accident, an argument, public speaking, anything intense enough to trigger a surge of adrenaline, noticeable through a racing heart or trembling hands, can spike your blood sugar directly. Because adrenaline signals the liver to dump stored glucose into the bloodstream as part of a fight-or-flight response. The distinction matters. If your numbers have been drifting upward for days or weeks with no acute trigger, stress is probably not your answer, and it's worth looking elsewhere before writing it off as just stress. One more piece worth knowing about. Once your blood sugar is elevated, it becomes harder for insulin to do its job, a self-reinforcing cycle called insulin resistance. As blood sugar rises, insulin's ability to shuttle glucose out of the bloodstream and into your cells gets progressively worse. Meaning the same dose of insulin that once brought your numbers down efficiently may need to be several times larger to achieve the same drop once your sugar is already high. This is exactly why letting a high number linger instead of correcting it early tends to make things worse rather than better over the following hours. So if you're waking up to numbers you can't explain, the real fix starts with figuring out which of these mechanisms is actually driving it, because gluconeogenesis, the dawn phenomenon, gastroparesis, and stress-driven insulin resistance each call for a different response, and no single tweak fixes all four. Track your bedtime number, your overnight trend, and your waking number for a week, and patterns will start to emerge that point you toward the real cause rather than a guess. If this kind of practical, evidence-based breakdown of what's actually happening in your body helps you make sense of your own numbers, subscribe, because understanding these mechanisms is the real key to getting ahead of them instead of chasing them every morning.